Hello everybody, we're going to start the game, but before I would like to give you some details about it. It is the first quest of the campaign, Free the Merchant. This quest changes quite a lot depending on the number of heroes you're using. For this game, I'm going to play with only one hero. She's Aki, the catfolk. And she's going to be accompanied by a dwarven mercenary she has hired for this mission. I want to use the skill Bodyguard, which is going to come quite handy since I'm playing with only one hero. Well, here you have Aki's special card. She's a pre-designed character. So she has a special skill. She can get potions for half the usual price. And she has a special object, which is Waste Ginger. She is a catfolk and her class is Assassin. Here you have her file. And here we have the card for the Dwarven Mercenary. I wasn't really sure whether I should equip him with a crossbow or with a heavy armor. And I think I'll finally choose the heavy armor, which means he won't have any range attacks. Aki has 3 skills due to her race and her class. Sharp senses as a natural race. And then 2 skills given by her class Assassin, Lethal Blow and Ambush. Ambush is going to come quite handy in order to win the initiative and also be able to reroll failed attacks if she wins the initiative. And Sharp Senses is going to be very useful too when it comes to exploratory actions and when she's exploring the dungeon. So this is a character who, as a single character for this quest, is not going to have a spellcaster supporting her. When I tried to choose a mercenary, I could have chosen a wizard apprentice or some other mercenary, like for example the human veteran, the orc, or even the ogre. But in the end, I have chosen the Dwarven Mercenary since that skill Bodyguard is going to be, I think, quite useful for the survival of Aki. But even though I will have to be very careful when I face an enemy spellcaster since I won't be able to dispel any spells. Aki is also going to have to play 2 different roles, the role of being a explorer and a warrior at the same time. Okay, since I'm going to be using only one hero, there are going to be 2 enemies already spawned on the scenery. We have one human bandit. He's going to be equipped with a broadsword and a shield, and another human bandit with a short bow. Here we have the 2 civilians that we are supposed to save in this quest. They're going to be on a wagon, and that means they're going to have the advantage of elevated position, and they also have light cover. However, they are very vulnerable if you compare them to the 2 enemies we have here, the 2 human bandits. So they can easily die. That means we have to decide an approach to this quest. We have to try to keep them on the wagon so they enjoy their elevated position and the heavy cover until we get there with the heroes. We must remember you can't run in the first turn of the heroes in this quest. Or the other option is making them flee, trying to escape and get out of reach of the human bandits. The heroes start in this quest, unless the quest description says otherwise. The heroes always start a quest, okay? And we must remember that we can't run during our first turn. There are a number of special rules in this quest, like for example, there is a limit of turns. It is 6 turns. However, since we are playing with an artificial dark player, they only have 5 turns to finish the mission. If there were more heroes, there would be more enemies. We only have 2 enemies because we're playing with 1 hero. The artificial dark player characters are going to target the merchants all the time, and they're going to move towards them too, unless they can't reach them in their turn and they have another enemy which they can reach. Here we have their 2 behavior cards, the range fighter for the one with the short bow and the melee fighter for the other one. And we will also use the generic rules, behavior rules, with an artificial dark player. They're going to attack all the time the enemy which they're going to hit most easily. And then their second option will be, if there is a draw, that enemy with the lowest armor. So first of all, we're going to roll 1 die to determine the environment of the quest. And it's daytime. With a result of 1, the quest would have taken place in nighttime. This would have been good for me because the humans have the rule Lost in the Dark, but Aki is cat folk, and that means she doesn't have that disadvantage. But well, this is the roll we got, so it means the quest is taking place during the daytime, during daylight. So I move Aki here, her 6 movement, and I move the dwarf 4 spaces. He has a very short movement. We must remember we can't run during the first turn in this quest. I'm also going to move the merchants. I want to get them far away from the bandits. Standing on the wagon would be good because I would have cover and elevated position, but I prefer to keep them away. A lucky shot from the guy with a crossbow could kill one of my merchants. So now I'm going to activate the enemies. We activate the range fighters first. Their priority for a target is going to be always that one, which is in this case, because we have a special rule, is going to be the merchants. But if they can't reach them, they will shoot the closer one. So this bandit is going to attack, in this case, my hero, Aki. The reason is that in this case, he has the same chances of hitting Aki or the dwarf, since none of them have a higher agility than the bandit. So they both have the same chances of being hit by the shot. However, now we must take into account that the dwarven mercenary has heavy armor and Aki is using light armor. So in this case, the draw is gonna be broken by shooting at the character with the lowest armor. So the bandit shoots and misses. Then I move the other bandit towards the merchants, and this is the end of the artificial dark player's first turn, and we start the hero's second turn. What shall I do? I'm going to try to get closer to the merchants so I'm able to protect them better, and I'm going to run with Aki. I roll to run. Remember that your maximum movement while running is the double of your movement attribute. So I can run for 12 spaces, which is more than enough. Remember too that you can't engage an enemy when you run, which means I cannot end my movement adjacent to one of my enemies. I will place Aki here. What shall I do with the dwarven mercenary now? I think I'm going to run 2. That is enough to run the 8 spaces, which is the double of his very low movement. Again, I can't engage an enemy, but he's going to be facing the shooter. I'm going to activate the merchants next. The first one is going to run. I roll and I move the merchant next to Aki, so he is more easily protected. And then I'm going to move the other one. I could place him behind the tree, which would give him cover. The bandit could move there and attack him with cover, but I'm going to make him run. I didn't roll a double one, which would be quite unfortunate, and I'm going to place the merchant there. I have zoomed on the map so you can better see both the map and the characters. It's a turn for the artificial dark player. And the first creature who's going to activate is the range fighter. The special rule of this scenario says that the artificial dark player creatures must always target the merchants. So this range fighter is going to attack the merchant here. He's going to move in order to have line of sight to him. He has a shooting skill of 7, so he should need just of 3, so he should need just a 7. But there are 2 penalties: one for having moved, a -1, and one because the merchant is more than 3 squares away. Remember that we have a penalty of a -1 for every 3 squares of range. So he needs a 9 instead of a 7. Let's roll and see what happens. We get a 6, which means the shot is missed. Now we will activate the other bandit. He has the profile of a melee fighter. He's not engaged by Aki, so he can move and engage this merchant. He has a combat skill of 3, and the roll is a 6. That makes a total of 9. But the merchant has a combat skill of 2 and is regarded as unarmed, which has a penalty of -1. So let's roll for him. He gets a 7 plus 3 for his combat skill. Plus 2 for his combat skill makes 9, but he's unarmed. That has a penalty of -1, so he loses the roll. Now the bandit's going to roll for damage. 3 damage dice for his strength, plus 1 for using a broadsword. He needs 3s, which means he deals 2 wounds to the merchant. Let's hope these are the last wounds the merchant takes. Now I must move them, both merchants, in such a way that they are able to escape from the bandits, and I must move my fighters so that they engage the other bandits. So a new turn for the heroes begins. Aki is going to attack this bandit. She gets a 7 plus her combat skill of 5, and that's a 12 with a critical hit. The bandit rolls and he loses the roll. He's going to try to block the attack with his shield. He would usually need a 5, but because of the critical hit, he needs a 6, and he gets a 4 and doesn't block it. So Aki has a strength of 3, plus 2 for using a scimitar, plus 1 extra die because of the critical. That makes a total of 6 damage dice, and because of lethal blow, she reduces her enemy's armor in 1. She needed 2s. That means we get 4 boons, and since the bandit has a vitality of 4, that means the bandit is knocked down. So 1 less threat for the other merchants. And then Aki is able to follow and occupy the empty space the bandit has left. She's going to, well, instead of doing that, she's going to move there because she hadn't moved yet, and she's going to block the way to the other merchant. We are going to activate the merchants now. They're going to move away from the bandit who's still alive. This other bandit will move here. They only have a movement attribute of 4, so in order to move to that square, I need to run. I get that result, so the merchant can easily move to that position behind the tree, so they get some cover from the ranged fighter. But we still have to activate the dwarven mercenary, who is going to move there. This is regarded as an attack from the front. If he had started his movement here in this position, it would be an attack from the back. The back of the standees is marked by this symbol there. So an attack from the back would be considered as such if the movement had started from one of these squares, all of them behind the character. When you attack from the back of a target, you get a bonus of +1. But it is not the case here, because the dwarf didn't start his movement from the back of his target. So let's see what happens with the dwarf's attack. He gets a very good result. It's a 9 with a critical hit. The dwarf has a combat skill of 4, that makes a 13, but then he has a -1 for using a battle axe, that makes a 12. And now the merchant is going to roll to defend. He has a combat skill of 3 and is regarded as unarmed because he's using a bow. But well, that's a very good result. 11. It's an 11 plus a 3 for his combat skill makes 14. -1 because he's unarmed, because he's using a bow. However, he still gets a total result which is higher than that of the dwarf, and that means he was able to defend very well and avoids being hit. He was extremely lucky, this bandit. So that's the end of the turn of the heroes, and a new turn for the dark player will start. So we only have the bandit with the bow left. So range fighters in these situations must first try to disengage from their enemies. He has an agility of 3, which means he needs a 7 on his test roll. Well, he makes it. He manages to disengage the dwarf and moves 3 squares back. And now he's going to shoot at the dwarf. So he rolls, he gets a 5, which is not enough with his shooting skill, but he has been able to disengage. And a new turn for the heroes to start. I'm going to keep the 2 merchants behind the tree. If I decided to move this merchant here, for example, then the archer, the bandit, would have chosen the merchant instead of the dwarf, because the special rule of the scenario says that the merchants must always be the predominant targets. Okay, so we're not going to move them from behind the tree. So I'm going to move Aki here to engage the bandit. These two boons are these merchants, and Aki is going to attack. But before doing that, range fighters, when controlled by the artificial dark players, must always perform defensive shots when possible. So defensive shots are a reaction against an enemy attack. They take place when the enemy is 3 squares away from a range fighter, and they have a penalty of a -2. That means the archer is going to need a roll of 9 instead of a 7. And luckily, he doesn't get it. If he had been able to hit and boon Aki, she would have to stop her activation there. But it's not the case. And that means Aki can resume her movement, engage, and attack the bandit. So she rolls, she gets a 7, plus a 5 for her combat skill makes a 12. But the bandit is being extremely lucky. He gets an 11. We must add 3 for his combat skill, -1 because he's unarmed, but he still wins the combat. Now we're going to activate the dwarf. He's going to engage the bandit, but he's going to do it from this position. Okay, so if things go wrong, he'll be able to attack from the bandit's back in his next turn. He rolls, he gets a very bad roll of a 4, +4 for his combat skill 8, -1 for the battle sword is a 7. But then again, the bandit defends very well and is able to avoid the hit. This is the end of the turn of the heroes. We have a new turn for the dark player. It was a very bad turn for the heroes. And now the bandit must try to disengage, and well, he not only doesn't get to disengage, but he also gets a result of a blunder, a critical failure. This means he gets 1 automatic hit from one of the enemies he was trying to disengage from. So the dwarf is going to hit, so he's going to directly roll for damage. He's going to roll 3 dice for his strength +2 for the battle axe, and the battle axe reduces enemy's armor in 1. He needed 2s, and that means the bandit has been knocked out. He tried to disengage for the second time, but he wasn't that lucky. This is the end of the game. It's a very simple quest in which we simply try to help you understand the basic mechanics of combat, but it can get quite complex. We would have had a very different game if I had only used 1 hero without a mercenary. And of course, the more heroes you're using for this quest, the more difficult it gets. There are more bandits, and one of them is easily able to escape and engage one of the merchants. I hope you liked it. Keep enjoying this game.